Hello and welcome to Fireside History. Now, up to this point, we've been tracking Shupilumish's invasions and wars, recently into Syria, but now we need to kind of move outside the Hittite lands very briefly, as this is linked to them, but it'll make more sense later because, well, we need to first examine Egyptian affairs at the time. Egypt had just come out of a period of good management. You see, they had their brilliant pharaoh Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh. Then they had Thutmose III. Then you had Amenhotep III. And the thing about these three monarchs is they're brilliant leaders. They were competent, they were builders, they were administrators. Admittedly, Thutmose III was more warrior than administrator, but he was still no slouch in this area and kept many of the people who were able-bodied and capable that his stepmother had appointed, and later appointed just as competent people later to key posts in Egypt. Amenhotep III, while he never stepped outside of Egypt, had, however, maintained a certain degree of competence throughout his reign. Akhenaten, though, let everything fall by the wayside. An incompetent, a buffoon, and a religious zealot to his one peculiar god, as well as fairly deformed from what the images can convey to us. Akhenaten was probably the greatest disgrace that ever mounted the Egyptian throne, which is saying something, considering some rulers, such as Ramses III. Now, what's notable is that the kingdom of Aziru, a border region in Syria of Egypt, that had long been a vassal state since Thutmose III's invasions there, had, however, begun to expand at the expense of the other vassal states of Egypt. Now, under Amenhotep III, they had been checked. Now, he did invite at one point the king to his court, only to kill him. The man couldn't very well be allowed to continue to take advantage of certain situations. This king was called Abdi Ashirta, but upon his death, his son Aziru took over the kingship. Now, Aziru was, well, how do I put it? Was well aware of his place. It seemed for a time. Now, our biggest source here is from certain key letters regarding Aziru's dealings. Now, where Amenhotep was slow to move to a limited extent, but once he did, it was with a certain amount of firmness. Akhenaten did no such thing. Rib-Hadda, a neighboring king of Gubla, or Byblos, would end up having to bear witness to one territory after another, one city after another of his fall to Aziru, who quickly followed through on his father's example, but expanded it. And expanded at everyone else's expense, particularly Rib-Hadda. Like, for example, he blockaded Sumer and annexed it, and like Aziru even destroyed the city, and this was Egypt's nerve center on the coast. And as it's written in the brilliant book Akhenaten the Heretic King by Donald B. Redford. And it's remarkable just how far Aziru got. And while he was ordered to rebuild Sumer, he did not forfeit a lot of his power within the region. And when he was commanded to come to Egypt for probably in what was planned to be a similar trap as that posed by Amenhotep III for his father, Aziru refused. Heck, some of the most brilliant letters not brilliant letters, but some of our main source here, like I said, is Ribhada's letters pleading rather pathetically with the king just to do something, anything, because Ribhada did not have the manpower or the resources to resist Aziru's aggression. And he would complain, for example, that, look, Aziru committed a crime when he had an audience with you, a crime against us. He has sent his men to Etakama, and he has smitten all the lands of Amki, the king's lands. And now he has even sent his men to take possession of the lands of Amki. Now, Aziru at one point did stay in Egypt, but then he was released, and upon the next request, that's when, I'm just clarifying here, he said, nope, not going. He knew it was a trap, and while he had been able to charm his way out of Egypt last time, he knew for a fact this was not going to be the case again, which is rather funny, I find, because, well, a letter from Akhenaten to his wayward subject, which is essentially the attempt to lure him into the trap, where Akhenaten tells him, now the king has heard as follows. You are at peace with the ruler of Kidsa, Kadesh. The two of you take food and strong drink together, and it is true. Why do you act so? Why are you at peace with a ruler with whom the king is fighting? But if you perform your service for the king, your lord, what is there that the king will not do for you? If for any reason whatsoever you prefer to do evil, and if you plot evil, treacherous things, then you together with your entire family shall die by the axe of the king. And when you wrote saying, may the king my lord give me leave this year, and then I will go next year to the king my lord. If this is impossible, I will send my son in my place. The king your lord let you off this year, in accordance with what you said. Come yourself now, or send your son, and you will see the king at whose sight all lands live. Basically, he's begging his own subject to listen to him. Now, if this doesn't sound weak and pathetic, I don't know what does. And the humorous thing is that, well, in response, Aziru decided to drop all pretense of being on Akhenaten's side, an Egyptian vassal, sent tribute to the Hittites, and basically swore himself to them. It was as simple as that. In one fell swoop, the border region near Kadesh switched over to the Hittites, and they did not have to strike a single blow. As for Rib-Hadad, well, his lands were taken from him after a palace coup. He was then forced to appeal to his enemy, and Aziru promptly betrayed him and dispatched him to several of his rivals, and he was killed. So for his great loyalty and his whininess to Akhenaten, he essentially died, which is a little tragic because he was loyal to Akhenaten, but, Akhenaten had no interest in anything outside his peculiar religion, which yielded him nothing but destruction and the loss of the empire, so to speak, which would never fully be regained, at least not as it stood in the glory days of Thutmose III and Amenhotep III. So, yeah. If you like this video, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. And tell me what you think of Aziru's actions, turning upon his liege after having utilized him to his utmost. It's, like I said, a rather humorous story of just sheer incompetence at the highest level.